Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right. Good evening. It's Wednesday night here in Taiwan. Please continue to pray for me by singing along, gesturing at your screen, and smashing that dislike button. Let's sing a few more times while we wait for a few people. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So I now sing Peter Dislike almost regularly because it's brought me a lot of good luck. It's landed me several jobs. It's brought good luck on first dates. It's kept me out of trouble. You know, uh, I had a lot of hiccups during this trip to Taiwan, and I would just sing Peter Dislike, and usually things will start resolving themselves. Unfortunately, I didn't find my passport. When I couldn't find my passport, I kept singing Peter Dislike. I asked the God of Dislikes to help me find the passport, and I also asked Mary Curry to also help me. I told her that I need the passport to go visit her granddaughter, and I took out a sheet of paper and I drew a picture of what I even remember where all the visa stamps were. So I drew a picture of that with the visa stamps, and I collected a bunch of dust from one day. The vacuum cleaner just happened to be outside, and I put a bunch of dust in the paper after I drew all the visas, folded it up, and I burned it. You know, household dust often contains a lot of Mary Curry's famed invention. It really does, because when radon decays, it becomes positively charged, and it sticks to the dust in the house. And I begged Mary Curry to please bring that passport back to me so that I promised to visit her granddaughter. And I even looked up how much the flight would cost. And I was really ready to book that trip if she had just brought the passport back to me, because I keep my promises, just like I kept my promise with the rewards with the blind dates. I'll get to that in a moment. I got more rewards coming up, and I drew what the passport looked like. I even remember where all the visa stamps were, and then I put a bunch of Mary Curry's invention in there. I folded it up and I burnt it, and then I went back to my luggage to look for it was in between some clothes, and I went back to the last hotel, even though it was a 1 hour train ride each way. I wanted to kind of sightsee anyway. I got some good sightseeing, but I didn't find the passport, and it's kind of unfortunate. I'm starting to suspect my roommate stole it. What had happened was a couple nights ago when I was in the hotel in Tumsway, my roommate was really upset at me. We had already argued before we went to bed because I had told him about single lives matter, and he doesn't speak really good English, and when it translated to Japanese, apparently it was a big insult of some sort. You know, sometimes Google Translate doesn't work really well. And later that night, he was really upset at how loud I was. Apparently, I was snoring, and he slapped my leg and pulled my cover away and said, "Stop it! Stop it!" And then I fell asleep again and apparently started snoring. And then he slapped me again. "Stop it! Stop it!" And then after he had woken me up the second time, now I was really making noise because I was tossing and turning, and he was really upset. But then he went back to his bed and he slept like a rock. And now looking back at it, I bet he stole the passport. He's like, ha ha ha, this guy's gonna have a really fun time getting back to the U.S. now. He probably didn't realize how long my trip was gonna be, right? He probably assumed I was going home tomorrow, just like he was, and I was gonna have a really fun time with that, right? And so I really should have paid attention. I trust people here. Um, give you an idea how much I trusted my roommates. I have my computer. This machine has about 64 gigabytes of RAM. Cost me $2,000, and I don't remember to lock it up every time. You know, Taiwan feels pretty safe to me. and I had my bismuth art, around, and I didn't always lock all that up, right? And nothing happened to it, and ah, but now looking back at it, he's my biggest suspect at the moment. Now I'm going to be designing some more Legos. So this is I visited Mount Fuji back in 2013, and I was very lucky to find a topological map. Right, each line is a certain elevation, and it hit me. I could use Legos to do the elevation. I drew some boxes. You can see a little bit of a grid paper here. I drew the boxes to for the Lego pieces, and now I can put all that together to make any computer games. Yep, I hit it big with an idea in Rummy Cube that I'm working on as we speak at the moment, uh, and but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to go to the embassy on Monday to sort out the password. I'm really upset at myself for not realizing that he would do something like that. I trusted people, and I thought that the noise issue was kind of a silly thing to begin with. I didn't think that it would lead to anything stupid like this. I wish he had stolen some other things, right? I did the bismuth art, or even my credit cards, or even the computer, right? At least I could. Sometimes when I lose my computer, I actually, when I have to redo a bunch of stuff, I find things that I overlooked, by the way. So that's usually not the end of the world. It's bad, but it's usually not the end of the world. But of all things that to steal, why the passport? That's the stupidest thing of all. Anyway, on to the rewards. Unfortunately, the girl that I met here, I don't think we hit any romantic sparks. We did talk about a life together, but then she talked about some elderly family members. She's gonna have to move back home to Vietnam. And earlier today, she was really disheartened she couldn't continue her job remotely there. Would have been nice if she could, because Vietnam obviously has a much lower cost of living. She could live like a queen over there. But so when I get home, I'm gonna have to start that. You guys remember back in November, I offered rewards for people to set me on blind dates. I might have to start that again. Um, let me bring back a little bit of history of why I started the reward. You got to go back 12 months ago, July 2024. I was lonely. I got a really bad case of COVID-19. It was hot outside, and the entire Phoenix area, the people there turned very hostile toward me. I hate to go into all the detail. You know what's really funny? When you see somebody who has COVID during a heat wave and they're loitering around because it's hot outside, right? They can't muster the strength to go drive. When you see somebody who's sick, right, whether it's COVID or cancer or just a common cold, or you see somebody who's heartbroken, right? You got to remember 2 weeks before the situation started, like they were, the people serving you at the restaurant, they were college professors just like me. They might have even been a rocket scientist, right? You got to zoom out and stop seeing these people as COVID positive people or cancer patients or whatever, right? You got to zoom out of that, right? It's just a little bit of a hack. But it was a big wake up call that the next time I get COVID during a heat wave, I better have some close connections. And I Googled a couple of things. I Googled how many first dates does one typically have to go on before they get married? And Google said 30. But then 50% of all marriages end in divorce, right? So I doubled it to 60. I took what was my net worth at the time, and I said, okay, what if I needed to spend half of that, right? I think that would be a reasonable trade, right? Spend half of your net worth, but now you have a partner. And so I took that amount, it was around $300,000, and I divided it by 60, and so that equals 5,000. And so each first date was potentially worth $5,000. That was the calculation that I started with. And so I offered a 10-ounce silver bar, at the time $200, for anybody to set me on a blind date. And I started to increase the reward until I got it. I think I eventually gave out about 40 ounces of silver plus a bunch of bismuth art. It was still well under the 5,000 threshold that I had calculated, though. And I went out with a Scottish girl, a little bit older than me. More importantly, it gave me a foundation to build on, right? Now I wasn't all alone anymore. In fact, my second reward was way smaller than that. And but when I get home, I want to start that reward program again. It was one of the best money I ever spent, right? Out of what, less than 4,000 altogether. So what I thought would be just one first date, I spent 4,000 altogether for about 10 of them, and then I found a bunch on my own anyway, because of all the experiences that I gained. But I want you to pray that I have good luck with three different alloys I want to do when I get back home. First, I learned that copper and zinc make an alloy called yellow brass. You need 30% zinc and 70% copper. It makes a yellow brass, relatively low melting point. The problem is that I'm not sure if zinc and copper will mix very well, because at the temperature that copper melts, zinc boils. But if it works, that will be some really cheap material I can get. All I have to do is go to the bank and buy pennies and mix them together in the right ratios, right? Another alloy I might try is a silver copper eutectic, 72% silver, 28% copper. It makes a eutectic that melts at about 700 degrees Celsius, which is pretty low, and I can't wait to pour that. I have an idea of how to mix that. See, Kennedy half dollars between 65 and 70 were 40% silver. Then I can mix with that some coins that are either 80, 90, 100% silver in the right ratios, and then melt it. That one's not that hard to do, because copper and silver, neither of them boil at very low temperatures. All you need to do is heat it high enough to melt both of them. And then you can, once you get the mixture, you can then lower it to the eutectic melting point. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody knows about this, correct me if I'm wrong. The other metal I might pour is aluminum. I have an idea of how to make it work with the aluminum cans. I have a little bit of an idea. I'm thinking of adding a little bit of, see, aluminum cans, when you melt them, a lot of it oxidizes away or something like that. I'm thinking of adding a small pinch of sodium metal. Hopefully, I figure out how to do that safely. Um, but I know how to make sodium metal as well, electrolysis of molten lye. And I'm thinking adding just a small pinch of that to the molten aluminum to get it to reduce back to aluminum. But three different metals I hope to work with. It'll be, if I figure out the aluminum and the yellow brass, those would make really nice rewards. They're cheap. In the case of aluminum, pretty much free for me. I got roommate. I had a former roommate who's an alcoholic. He drinks stuff in aluminum cans all the time. We have a lot of sodaholics at the college campus, and they're pretty good about putting their cans in the recycle bin. I could just haul that back home to work on, and now I won't be spending $5,000 per reward. It'll be like pretty much free, or just labor, right? As long I need to get an apartment where the electricity is covered, so that the landlord can pay all the rewards for me, right? Right. All right. Why don't you guys continue to pray for me? I'll probably start with the aluminum and the yellow brass, and if that doesn't get any takers, then I'll throw in some silver as well. So pray that all of those art projects work well. All right, please sing along, gesture at your screen, leave a dislike. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.